Hi, everybody, and welcome back to TV for Real, where reality and scripted collide. My name is Mike Bloom. I am missing Sasha Joseph today, but I have a heck of a guest in her stead. And I think it only actually is appropriate that there are two people on this podcast working together as an audio video based team, considering that we know her for racing around the world together. And even though I am a bit less of a stranger coming into this than her partner was for The Amazing Race season 29, no matter what, it prevailed with $500,000 in her pocket. So excited to welcome the winner of The Amazing Race season 29, Brooke Camhi.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Brooke?
I am doing well. I'm excited. I have seen your podcast here. I have seen people who are very, very knowledgeable on certain shows, and I'm nervous, but in a good way. I'm also nervous because my childhood shows are probably before a little smidgen before your time. So let's see how we do. What we talk about and how off the rails this goes in comparison to my other co-host, the one and only gorgeous Bryce Isaiah, when we weekly podcast on The Amazing Race and we jump all over. So I think it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Let's find out.
A, you are not a problem. And B, listen, chaos is welcome here. We are inviting all the entropy. Throw everything in there. And as is indicated by the fact that you and I both came in being like, I don't know where this is going. I mean, you challenged. You said we might play Stump the Host today, just because you might think that, yes, you know, I'm maybe a little bit of the younger side compared to you, even though I did just turn 35, so I can run for president technically. But I'm an old soul, Brooke.
Okay. I'm an old human. So let's see what happens. I think this is going to be fun.
All right, perfect. So then talk to me a bit about the shows you grew up on then. What's the first show you remember becoming like a really big fan of in your youth?
Oh my God, actually, it's so funny that what's the first show? I have a list because let's get real. I write notes. It's so funny that it's not on here, but the very, very first show I remember watching, you won't know, was Romper Room, which was like this great, you don't know it, don't shake your
I've
head
heard of Romper Room. I've heard of Romper Room.
So I was on Romper Room when I was 4 years old. What? I don't know how this happened. Yes, this is my first TV experience. Was on. It's not even in my note. Romper Room, and with my friend Emily Buckman and our moms took us to Romper Room. This literally was like hiding back here, and I remember in classic Brooke fashion, I cried because my stockings had a run in them. I had this cute little dress, and I remember walking a balance beam, and my stockings ran. That's my first TV memory, and funny, full circle. I never stopped crying on television. Yay! At least I'm consistent.
Yeah, there you go. The Romper Room expanded to the whole house and beyond on The Amazing Race. So how did this happen? Is this like, did you audition for this, or was it a matter of like, hey, show up in the audience and they pick kids to come on?
Yeah, I definitely didn't audition for anything. I think this was, I don't know how it happened. Maybe I was 5. This is one of the earliest memories I have. And I definitely didn't audition because my mother is not a stage mom. I kind of wish she was a little bit more of a stage mom. I was a musical theater major in college. I wish they'd been a little more pushy. Like in high school, I did some showcase and I got called into the city to do auditions for an agency. And I went, and they were very great. They were like, do what you love, no pressure, blah, blah. And I'm like, I might be a celebrity if they had put a little more pressure on me, Mom. No, just kidding. They're great people. But I think it was just show up.
I mean, if that's the case, though, I mean, listen, runs in your stockings have been like the littlest of concerns to cause cancellation nowadays. Just imagine what could get you in trouble now.
I mean, but you know what? There are people out there saying the worst things in the world and unfortunately has yet to cancel them. So I don't know. I guess it depends on who you are, how quickly you get canceled.
So then I'm intrigued. After your Romper Room debut, was there like a memory associated with the show? Like, did you ever keep watching it just thinking? Because I would imagine from my perspective, I just think back to like, oh man, I'm just thinking back. I'm having PTSD from when I had the run in my stockings. It was
I don't think I was old enough to have PTSD. I think maybe I didn't even understand like who are those kids? Like I'm the romper room girl. What's happening? Also, apparently, I was very self-centered as a 5-year-old. But until I was 5.5, I was an only child. So I think maybe that's what it was. I had only child syndrome until my little brother came around.
Did your brother ever make an appearance on television, or were you the first one?
I will tell you, he so badly wants to be on Survivor. And I said, I know people, so make a video. But my brother and I are polar opposites. Like, I am OCD, neat freak, a place for everything and everything in its place. We're both lawyers. Like on the surface, we're both lawyers. We're both type A. We're both a little bit. But I will like, I don't understand how we're siblings. Like we're just he's very messy. I'm very clean. He's a genius. He's very, very smart. He's also incredibly funny, but you wouldn't know it unless you paid attention because he's soft spoken. Like he's under his breath funny. I have never been described as soft spoken in my life, which is fine.
Listen,
one person has to be like dresses up like a dingbat and does plays for their family and the family. We can't have two of those. So I was the one.
That being said, so outside of, dressing up in your own outfits, including perhaps some wardrobe mishaps and showing up on screen, what were you watching on screen as a kid? What made your list besides the stuff that came off the grid in Romper Room?
Like a little, I mean, what, like the Magic Garden, like Paula's, like little kids to Sesame Street when I was a little kid. But then, I mean, more fun kid. Like when you were growing up, was your Saturday morning like Saved by the Bell and then cartoons mostly?
Yeah, it was weird, right? Because they did a little bit of like, now listen, kids, I know you're here for our cartoons, but like we're gonna sucker you in with this wacky teenage sitcom.
I was very into Saved by the Bell. I was I wanted to be Lisa Turtle, but she was much more fashionable than I was, and so I was probably
she would not get a run in her stockings, that's for sure.
No, Lisa Turtle was way above the run in her stockings. I was probably like a Jessie Spano type, but they needed a theater nerd. I was a theater nerd, so they didn't have that. That was the one very stereotypical demographic that was missing.
I'm trying to remember, there was a Saved by the Bell episode where I think they did like a school play, but I don't think any of the typical theater kid types were a part of that. I think they all just our Bayside Six just ended up becoming a part of that because it was the thing to do that week.
I will say they did so there were a lot of famous people who guest starred on Saved by the Bell. So at one point, Tori Spelling was on Saved by the Bell, and she was like a choir, like she was like a wallflower who ended up being a singer in the choir, like that. I'm the Tori Spelling, and maybe that's why I love Beverly Hills 90210. That was when I turned 9. Beverly Hills 90210 came on the air. I know I aged myself, and I was obsessed. Like Brenda Walsh and I were the same. Like I loved her, and I thought she was treated so unfairly by everybody.
The more I think about it, the more maybe it was a Tori Spelling, like the prototype Glee kid, where it's like she's coming out of her shell and she's found love through the art of music.
The Glee kids, I feel like, were never really in a shell. Those kids, I was a Glee kid. Honestly, if we broke out into a song right now, like that would be normal to me, and I'm okay with it. Like I have friends who we just sometimes break out in song. Is that not a thing that most people do on a regular basis in their daily life?
I mean, listen, nowadays, people break out into songs maybe just because they're doing TikTok challenges. So really,
no, I don't have the TikTok. I feel like I'm too old for the TikTok, but also too young no, I'm not too young for anything probably. But yeah, so Beverly Hills 90210 is probably like the first adult show that I watched at 9, and my parents tried to stop me, but they couldn't stop me.
So what did you do? Were you like someone who did you have a TV in your room? Did you sneak downstairs after you were supposed to be in bed?
My mom actually watched it with me in the beginning just to like make sure it was okay. And she was like, she probably doesn't understand most of this anyway. So it's fine. I was not allowed. There were 2 shows that I was not allowed to watch. We were not allowed to watch as kids: Married with Children and Three's Company. I don't know why.
Three's Company?
Yeah, because you know what? If you go back and watch Three's Company, it's dirty. It's like all
there's
about sex.
yeah,
Oh,
there's so many innuendos that it's basically like outuendos where
right.
like they're not even veiling any of these
Mm-mm,
references.
mm-mm. So those, but like I so was not allowed to watch Married with Children that I so badly wanted to watch Married with Children.
Right.
And so yeah, I would sneak, and I know my dad thought it was funny, and so I was like, what's he laughing at? Can I be part of this?
That's interesting. Yeah, this idea of like trying to discover things. I mean, I guess in those days it really was through osmosis because it's like, well, I'm watching
Back in the days of yore, like
well, because
many, many moons ago.
well, because I do think nowadays there is, content that kids can look at on their own, right? They can
Mhm.
go to Netflix and watch some things. Whereas like basically up until the past 5 years or so, you pretty much watched what your parents were watching because it wasn't like you could necessarily go off with an iPad and like watch your own curated content. And I think there's probably also an element of, yeah, I look up to my parents, and so I want to be interested in what they're interested in, at least initially.
That's true. I think I'm trying to think if there were any. I mean, this is so cheesy. We watched The Amazing Race as a family growing. Like, no, but it didn't. The
Aww.
Amazing. That's a lie. The Amazing Race didn't start till I was 20 something like that. So, but when it did, and I was home because it used to be Sunday nights. Like we did
Yeah.
used to watch it as a family. But there are. I'm trying to think if there were any shows that like we used to. I mean, when I was in college, my girlfriends would come over, or I guess it was high school. My two best friends who were twins would come over, and with my mom and them, we would all watch Sex and the City together, which I thought was
Ooh.
kind of cute. Except sometimes it was too racy, and I'd be like, "Oh my god, my mom is
Yeah,
sitting on
I
the
was gonna
couch
say,
next
what was
to
it
me."
like watching it with your mom in the room?
I think we both had this feeling of don't look at her, don't look at her. Like if if we don't look at her, she's not there.
Yeah, I had a very not like completely similar experience, at least not on a weekly basis. But when I was 14, I think 14 or 15, my parents took me to see the movie Sideways with Paul
Uh-huh.
Giamatti and
Mhm.
Thomas Hayden Church. And it was like, oh, this is a funny movie. It's quirky. I think it was A24. Let's go see it. I'm not sure if you remember, Brooke, but there is one scene where like Thomas Hayden Church, who's a little bit of a man whore, like Paul Giamatti picks him up outside of a one night stand's house and like he jumps into the car because he's being chased by like this full frontal naked man. And like you could feel the heat coming from all three of us, me and my mom and my dad, of just all of us sitting there realizing the mistake that we had made in the moment.
That's
And then it was brief. Then we sort of moved on. Then like the only, R-rated stuff was profanity. But that is an image that is emblazoned in my mind in more ways than one.
I have a similar image.
Hmm.
It's theatery though. I saw the Full Monty on Broadway with my mother, and we like to go see Broadway shows together. We actually had a tradition where every year for my birthday, we would eat, if it was like a Wednesday, we'd take the day off. We would go see a matinee. We'd go see something. And one year it was the Full Monty, and I'm thinking, why did we do this? Because we knew what was going to happen at the end, and it was just sort of this thankfully at the end. So at the end of the Full Monty, everybody is naked and like full frontal naked, but they're all backlit, so like you rarely see anything. But I just remember being slightly uncomfortable as we sat there, and I was like, okay, it's got to be over soon. But it's such a good show that like I didn't want it to be over. I don't know. Same kind of feeling.
Did 90210, was that sort of a gateway to you for a bunch of those other teen dramas that just blew up, like Melrose
Obviously.
Place?
Melrose Place was the best thing ever. Heather Locklear is the best person on. I mean, Melrose Place was 90210 on steroids. Like it was so good. And then, but I also am kind of like a teenage girl, so like One Tree Hill or Gossip Girl or The OC, like all of these. And then I have a younger cousin, and she watched Pretty Little Liars, so I too watched Pretty Little Liars. And I'm not gonna lie, like these shows are such mindless awesomeness. Like
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what is it about that genre that appeals to you? Is it just like the kind of
what
over the top?
doesn't appeal to you? Are you kidding? Like, oh my god! Like it. First of all, like okay, back to not 90210, Beverly Hills 90210. Not
there
that
we go. Not that
reboot
reboot.
thing. No, that was trash. But as much as I related to Brenda, poor Kelly Taylor had everything happen to her. Like, how did this woman survive life? Like, she was carjacked, she was shot, she was sexually assaulted, she was in a fire, like, and yet she came out smelling like roses. Like, I don't understand how she made it through alive. I
Plot
really feel like
armor.
the writers are like, what else can we do to her?
I mean,
there's nothing else to do.
that's the thing. Like, we're, living back in the day when there were 20. Actually, I'm looking at these. There was up to 32 episodes in a season of Melrose Place. So they just run out of ideas. They're like, all right, let's do some more Jenny Garth torture porn in these series of episodes.
Also, did you ever watch Melrose Place?
I watched a little bit of Melrose Place. I was a little bit, it came
Say
out.
young. You were gonna say young.
Well, no, I remember it was towards the tail end because like once I turned like 10 or 11 and those series, I think Melrose Place actually ended like in 2000. Like, okay, Y2K wasn't a thing. It's time we land this plane. But I do remember watching some of it. But of course, that's like latter day these shows where things just go completely wackadoo. Like I even glanced at on One Tree Hill, which just went entirely ridiculous by the end.
It was horrible, but amazing. One of the best moments of TV of all time that will live in my brain forever. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. And if you've seen any Melrose Place, I feel like you have seen it. So Marsha Cross from like Desperate Housewives fame was on Melrose Place. She played Dr. Kimberly Shaw. I loved her. I loved her. And at one point she like went missing, or she might have been escaping an abusive relationship and like what's
she
the
gone?
name of
Did
that
she
movie?
She gone girls herself?
Not Gone Girl. What's the movie with Julia Ross, Sleeping with the Enemy, like herself, where she like faked her death or whatever. Anyway, she comes back like a season later, and oh my god, and she's in the mirror of her house, and she pulls her hair off, and she has this like gruesome scar all down the side of her head, like she had like brain death. It is one of the best moments of television because the first time you saw it, you were like, oh, like her whole. I'll just find it. It's a moment. Like that's just one of those moments of television that will live in my brain forever.
Did they describe what happened afterwards, or was there no explanation?
Sure. No, there was definitely an explanation. I'm just trying to remember. I mean, this is now 20 years ago, and plus I'm trying to remember the storyline. Like she either disappeared and they thought she was dead, and then she came back, and I'm sure we can find it if we look it up. But
yeah,
the storyline mattered less than the reveal. It was raining and it was dark and there was lightning and she was in the bathroom mirror, and during one of the lightning like bolts, you see her pull her hair out. It's just so
and
good.
Bam! This is what we get.
That's Kimberly Shaw with her hair. I don't remember the why, but I do remember the moment.
I mean, this is like a pretty stark image in multiple ways. Like, imagining her turning up after an entire season away, and then she just has a random scar to answer for.
What's the reasoning? I'm gonna have to go back and look it up, but that's one of those moments. I feel like every show has a moment, a Kimberly Shaw moment in them.
Well, especially those days as well. And I guess the more you talk about it, the more it does seem like, I don't know, how comparable are these to soap operas for you? I mean, certainly they can get as outlandish. So that's interesting because I do feel like they're not necessarily two sides of the same coin, but I do feel like this idea of like, I got to tune in weekly to see what's going on with my
soap operas are
characters.
Daily. That's nuts to me. I had friends in college who would watch, I think, General Hospital, and they would schedule their classes so they didn't have class during General Hospital, because I grew up in a time where, yes, there was TiVo, but like we didn't have DVR at the beginning. Like it was not, you couldn't just go watch anything anytime. If you missed it, tough. Like it was what it was, and you had to like go out and buy the DVDs at some point in the future. You were not able to just go like this and see whatever and everything. So they would schedule their classes around it. But I can say with full honesty, I have never watched an episode of a daytime soap opera.
That I just never thought, and again, maybe I'm just dating myself with when I went to school, but like of scheduling classes around watching TV shows, because again, the vast majority of them are at night, and unless you take night classes, you don't need to necessarily worry about that. But yeah, if you have a standing appointment to watch Days of Our Lives from 3 to 3:30 every day, Monday through Friday, then yeah, sorry, Trig, you're gone.
Right. Or you just, opted out of that class or failed. I do remember it was toward the very, very beginning. I went to school upstate at Syracuse, and 24 was a big thing at the beginning of when I was at school there. And so we would have standing, like they called it the Melrose Place of Syracuse. It was called Castle Court. It was literally like an apartment complex, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 apartments total. And it was around this parking lot. So it was kind of U-shaped, and there were 4 along the front, and I had one, and my then boyfriend had one 2 over, and he would have like parties. There were 4 people in mine, 4 people in his, and like it was a great little area to live. But everyone would go over and watch 24, and one of his roommates had the TiVo. So you paused it, and everyone got there and sat around, and then 15 minutes in, we would start it so we didn't have to watch with the commercials. And that show's genius, honestly.
Interesting. Tell me more. Yeah, what did you like about it?
I mean, I think it's the first, as far as I can remember, the first show that really it was real time. There were 24 episodes in a season. Mm-hmm. You go to commercial at like 9:07, you come back from commercial at 9:11. It was actual time, and it wasn't like that show was so good. But then they also did a reboot of that, which was kind of like whatever. I would go back and watch seasons of 24 again. That's legitimate. My brother ran into Kiefer Sutherland once by NYU.
Interesting.
My brother went to NYU for grad school, and Kiefer Sutherland, I guess, had a daughter who went there. Mm-hmm. And so he was sitting on a bench, and my brother was sitting on a bench, and he's like, he says, "You're Kiefer Sutherland." And he's like, "I know." Yeah. And so the story goes, I kind of don't believe this happened, but he's a lot of things, but he's not a liar. He asked Kiefer Sutherland for a picture, and Kiefer Sutherland was kind of like, "I don't really do that." And my brother's like, "No one is going to believe, or no one's going to know that I met you." And Kiefer apparently turns to him and goes, "We'll know." And my brother was like, "Okay, bye."
Yeah, what a very polite way to shrug off this stranger. Like, this will be between you and I. This will be our own intimate experience. No one else needs to know.
I would not have taken "will know" for an answer, I don't think.
That's true. Again, that's maybe showing the soft-spoken side of him. He's like, right. "Oh yeah, all right, sure. I hope they believe me, Mr. Sutherland." And you're like, "No, listen."
I would have gotten up and turned around and been like,
I'm getting a signed affidavit from you. I'm getting a video. Hold up today's newspaper, hostage style.
This is funny. I have it here. So a friend of mine works. I don't even know how this is where we're going. This is the pilot script for 24, or a copy of the pilot. It's a copy of the pilot. A friend of mine worked on something with Tony Krantz, who was one of the, producers. And it's signed, and it says, "Brooke, thanks for watching, Tony Krantz," not Kiefer Sutherland, but still cool. That's and like it's the pilot script. And I have gone back and watched the pilot episode and compared it to the script, because I do have a signed thing from Kiefer Sutherland. Am a nerd.
I did not realize you were so into 24.
I did. It literally just sits here. But 24 was great. Did you never watch it?
I never watched it. No. So my story is that living with depression and anxiety, I did not get into TV dramas until Lost. And I know that Lost sort of came out around the same time at 24, but I was very much dipping my toes into the waters. And so it wasn't really for me until we started to get really the era of peak TV with like Mad Men, Breaking Bad, like really the mid to late aughts was when
Breaking Bad's one of the best shows ever.
Oh yeah, but that's when I really started to get into more dramas besides Lost. So I kind of missed the boat on 24, because then once that had happened, we had already had the mountain lion attack and the gassing and the CTU. So like I had known some of the big hits, but I do. I mean, listen, one of our devotees, our pod fathers here, Josh Rickler, is an absolute legendary fan of the show, and so
of 24, because he's genius. You will not be disappointed. Maybe like not the first season. Maybe like there's one season with some virus that's really good. If you have, because I know you don't do anything, you're not at all busy. You're not doing this.
No, I just twiddle my thumbs in between getting to talk to people. So like
if you find the time, do yourself a favor. Breaking Bad, I think the best episode of Breaking Bad. There's one episode that they're in it's one of those container episodes, and they're in the lab the entire time, and it's told from the point of view of like a fly.
That's your favorite episode of Breaking Bad?
It's not my favorite, but it's a genius episode of Breaking Bad. I think it's overlooked. I think you need to go back and rewatch The Fly.
I think especially nowadays, because again, looking back at like the 32 plus episode Melrose Place seasons, now you have people, grass is always greener, being like, I want to bring back shows that did bottle episodes, that did filler episodes. And that was what The Fly was accused of being.
Filler! Oh, whoever accused it of that, they are wrong. But honestly, I do think all of these shows might pale in comparison to, it's not even on my list. We're not even near my list. I think maybe I want to say the best show, but I feel like that's an overstatement. No, because there are some, The Wire is maybe one of the best things to ever hit. I had a tendency to not watch things live. I went back and watched them when I could, not wait 2 years to see Jon Snow come back to life, or I could not wait.
Oh, interesting.
I'd never seen Curb Your Enthusiasm until this year, and we did 12 seasons
Yeah.
in like 8 weeks. Like we just went and watched several episodes a day.
Have you always been a binger? Were you someone to like, even back in the days of like VCR, like stockpile a bunch of episodes and then watch them through?
I like to watch things live as they happen, but if I missed something, like Game of Thrones, I was going to start in maybe season 2 or season 3, and then I was like, you know what? No, because then I'm still going to have to wait. The coolest part about Game of Thrones, I watched it for the first time. It had a back surgery. I think it was my second one, so maybe it was like 20. When did Game of Thrones end?
2018.
Okay, so it was 2017 because
2019 is when it ended. Yeah.
Oh no, I had a back surgery. I had a back surgery in 2017 and 2019. So after one of the back surgeries, I think it was the 2017. My friend Jelani, who was on The Amazing Race, he is a huge Game of Thrones fan, and he's like, "You're going to be sitting around. You have a couple weeks to like recover. Start watching it." So I was on painkillers, but he came over, and I was like, "You're going to need to explain to me all of it." Because I was like, this is going to go right over my head.
That's not the right show to have on painkillers. You're drinking milk of the poppy, basically. And we know how the world, how much that clouds the mind.
I will say that he came over. Not only did he bring me a map so I could understand where everybody was and who was what and where everybody was.
He brought a map?
Dude is a huge fan of Game of Thrones. But we watched the first few episodes together, and I was like, pause, who that, and what's happening here? And so he explained all the families to me and all of like the lines and this and that. And I got so into it and I was so excited because I remember like Jon Snow dies, spoiler alert, like whatever. And people had to wait like a year and a half to find out what happened to him. I had to wait 5 seconds because I just watched the next episode. And I was like, this is great, wonderfulness. And by the time I got to, what was it, 8 seasons? By the time I got to the last season, I was watching live with everybody else. So it sort of worked out nicely.
Yeah, I like doing that as well. And when you first brought it up, I do think there is some realm of thinking of like, I want to watch this show, but now that it's over, like it has a distinct endpoint, because there is something to wanting to watch live. But like, for instance, I only started watching Vanderpump Rules a few months ago because I was like, okay, it's ending. Great. Now it doesn't need to be a case where like I'm consistently running after somebody that's X amount of paces. They've stopped. I can catch up to them.
Catch up. Exactly. I've also never seen an episode of Vanderpump Rules. I've also only seen maybe like here or there a smattering, and only New York. I've never seen a Housewives anything. And I have friends who are like, oh, you're such a whatever housewife. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. It means nothing. I could not tell you who you're talking about.
It's interesting because I think certainly there are accusations of, those types of shows being scripted, but don't tell them to their face. We saw that from Parvati and The Traitors. But I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's like a huge jump from those shows you grew up on, like a 90210 and a Melrose Place, where it's like, all right, what's the problem of the week? We're going to sit down in this very candid location where the cameras are set up perfectly and talk about them.
And I mean, if you give someone enough alcohol, you're going to get yourself some drama. That's what happens right on The Bachelor and Bachelorette. They will just ply you with enough until something dramatic happens. I don't know.
Well, going back to The Wire here. So yeah, when did you get into that? Because I was very much, to go back to, those stories that you were relaying. I think I watched all of The Wire like 10 years ago, and it was just a random spur of the moment, like, I should probably watch this. When did you come into it?
It was less than that for me. So my brother and I are very opposite, but I trust his taste in stuff like this. And so he had all the seasons on DVD, and I was like, yeah, I could do this. And so this was, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe less, because I feel like maybe 4. But I very much remember like Matt was like, what are you doing? And I was like, shh, something big is going to happen to Omar. Something big happened to Omar.
Wow, you called it.
That also an amazing scene in a television show that will live with me forever. I mean, you've seen it. I feel like if I spoil it for somebody who hasn't seen it now, it's been out for a while. That's probably okay. But when he walks into that convenience store and you see that little kid and you're like, but like, that's such a good, there are just these beautiful moments that live in my brain forever.
I'm really intrigued from your perspective, being a lawyer,
Mhm.
like, because I'm also thinking about, like, I think Maurice Levy, like one of those characters, or another iconic Omer scene, right? Of like, the difference between you and me is that you've got the briefcase. Do you look with a differing eye upon depictions of courtrooms and lawyers in pop culture?
Um, I mean, there's things I can't watch. Like I can't watch Law and Order. It's just so not real and so wrong. And I just because you sit down, and you're. It's probably why doctors can't watch like Grey's Anatomy, which
Hmm.
also, by the way, I was obsessed with and have. I'm like one of those weirdo people who's gone back and just rewatched many seasons. There's no reason. It's just such mindless, like good drama.
Have you fallen off, or are you all caught up
Oh
in?
no, I'm caught up. I'm like one of three
You're
people
ready
who
for
still
season
watches it.
21?
There was a crappy COVID season in there, but honestly, I stuck with it, and it's not good anymore. I mean, it's like they tried to bring back some of it. It's just it's not bad. I'll stick with it forever. If Shonda Rhimes is watching, I love you. But it's not Scandal. Scandal was probably the best thing she ever did. Like that show was. It made me want to be a fixer. It made me want to be a lawyer. Like that show was so good. And then I was
Interesting.
probably disappointed that that's not what real life was. And my father was not the head of a crime syndicate. Um, that I
Not that
know
you
of.
know.
Right. I feel like I know.
You were really trying to get into everything that he was interested in. Maybe there was just one facet of his life that you didn't realize, which was that he was putting out hits behind the scenes.
Honestly, if 20 years from now, how old is my dad? Okay, if 30 years from now, once he's no longer with us, I find out that he was like the criminal mastermind behind something, I will be just impressed. Like I'll be impressed with him. Not that I'm not impressed with him now. He's a very impressive man. But like if you can hide a secret like that, like hide a whole nother life, good for you.
Well, maybe he has his own Olivia Pope to keep things in check.
No, I want to be his Olivia Pope. Like that actually would hurt if I found out that that's somebody else. I could do it. Like
You have an in-house Olivia Pope in your family,
exactly.
Dad. What are you doing?
Thanks, Dad.
Go to your list for me, because it seems like we haven't even doted upon some of the stuff that's on there, and I don't want to shirk the list in any way. What are
I
some
mean,
shows?
we touched some of them. There was so as much as I can't watch Law and Order, I can very much watch and have stolen lines from The Practice and Boston
Oh,
Legal. Like those shows were because they were written by actual lawyers and they
mm.
were just very smartly written. I'm actually not joking that I have lifted um, monologues from that show. And also, I'm a little embarrassed to say there was a show called Franklin and Bash, also
Oh
written
yeah.
by lawyers with
I know
Jack
what we can say.
Morris
Yeah, Saved by the Bell.
on it. And they had a case that was very similar to a case I was trying at the time. And it's not stealing. I mean, like, it's out there. And I used some of it, and it worked.
So, how did this happen? Like, was it just a coincidence that you were
Yeah,
watching?
serendipitous. Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't like Googling Franklin and
No,
Bash and typing in the, statements
no, it
of your
just happened to
case.
be at the same time. Also, House for some reason. I don't know why. I remember stealing something. I remember watching an episode of House, which I also loved that show.
Mhm.
And you know what it is? It would happen sometimes where I'd be watching something and I would be like, huh, interesting point. Maybe I could use that in the future. And I will stop a show and I will take notes. And I've gotten to use some of that like in cases.
Has it ever gotten called out on there? You didn't have to like try against Hugh Laurie or anything, right? Where he's
Oh
like,
my
wait a minute, I remember that.
I love him. Side note, he's a very, very talented actor. But no, but also there's a reason people are enthralled with TV shows. The writing is good and people get drawn in. And I mean, trials are just theater you can win. So why not use what helps, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's very true.
yeah,
That's so interesting. So the house one, I'm still
I'm a
kind of
plagiarist.
mystified by.
I don't remember what it was, but I do remember when I was moving into this apartment. So it must have been like 8 or 9 months ago. I was packing up my old apartment, and in my desk, I found a little piece of notebook paper, and it said "house" at the top, and it was just like a little paragraph. And I was like, "Oh, this is the thing I used for the thing." It's gone now, but I found it, and
I'm glad nobody found it, considering it had house written on the top. So it's like, oh, you very clearly copied this.
but who's to say I can't? Why couldn't I? It's not
Yeah.
illegal. What am I doing with it?
Yeah, that's very true. It is. I guess it is sort of like I don't know how copyright law works, but like it's kind of public access in a manner of
I mean,
speaking.
it's
And
just something I saw on TV. The names and faces have been changed to protect the.
and you
Well,
say
at
you
that
don't
time
watch
I was
Law
a
and Order.
prosecutor. That time I was a prosecutor, so I will say the allegedly guilty. Now I would use it to get people out of jail. What else is on my list? Oh, Parenthood, Friday Night Lights. I mean,
Mm.
Matt Saracen was like, I know my sister-in-law's obsessed with Tim Riggins, who she says is the best character of all time.
You weren't a Riggins girl.
I mean, he's great. Matt Saracen was like, he was the best. I love him. Like, I just think he's fantastic. That show was a show that Matt has never seen. Matt, and I was like, we should go. I will rewatch that one from the start, no problem. That's just good quality television.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So have you rewatched it yet, or is that just
Not
like
yet.
in the queue?
It's in the queue. It'll happen at some point when it can. I happen to have more time than he does, and I'll be like, let's. And he's like, it's just what it is it's daunting. Like that's probably why it took until after like a surgery or something where I knew I had downtime to pick up a show where it has like 5 seasons or 8 seasons. Like to sit down right now. I mean, I've had people be like, you need to, I've never seen Succession or anything like that. People are like, you need to watch it. And I'm like, but there's so many. Like it's just so much to sit down like episode 1, season 1, and just like prepare yourself for a lot.
That's the thing. I mean, it's also, the fact that these are not, maybe one of the reasons why you got through Curb so quickly is because it's also like easy breezy half-hour comedy episodes versus like Succession is an incredible and an incredibly funny show, but it's still like an hour of your time and you really have to pay attention and sift through everything that's going on. And it is just a matter of like making the commitment, because also it's not like back in the day where there was this dead period of end of May to September where like there's nothing on. It's like, oh, I can use this to catch up. Before you know it, and you're like, great, I'm going to commit to watching this 6-season show. It's almost this September, and that's when a bunch of other shows come back, and you're like, well, now I can't really fit this in my schedule.
There's just so much content now. It's also in Curb Your Enthusiasm. There's another one of those moments that is like the moments that will live in my head forever. I don't know if you watched it.
I've watched like bits and pieces of it. I've watched like select seasons of it.
I'm going to send you this scene. It is one of the most perfect scenes ever in comedy. Larry David is sent it's a Garmin, like one of those navigation things for your car.
Oh, yeah.
So before cars had navigation, it was like one of those things you put on the mirror or dashboard and you type in where you're going. And he's trying to it's the opening of an episode. He's trying to open it. But it's in plastic because it's like one of those things that you can't open because the plastic it's stupid. And it's just him in his kitchen. Yeah, and he opens this present, he takes it out of the bag, he's like, oh, like there's no words. He's just like, that's so pleased to have gotten a present. Then he tries to open it. Then he tries harder to open it. And then he pulls like a screwdriver out of the drawer and starts stabbing at it. And then he pulls a full-on like butcher knife out of the drawer and tries to, you think he's going to lose a hand. By the end, he throws it on the ground and he's like stomping on it, can't open it. It is pure genius. The full circle of it is at the end. So the people who gave it to him were like, just get a box cutter or whatever. At the end of the episode, he buys the box cutter. And at the end of the episode, he needs to use the box cutter for something, but the box cutter is wrapped in plastic and he can't get the box cutter out. It's such a genius episode. That show's full of genius episodes. There was one where Colby from Survivor.
yes.
It's also one of my favorite episodes of all time because they're having a dinner party and somebody says, it's about the Holocaust, which is not.
Yes, I believe it's that they invite, like people try to one up each other by bringing a survivor, and one person brings a survivor of the Holocaust, and one takes it quite literally and brought Colby.
He thinks that he's bringing this Holocaust survivor, and somebody else is like, I'm bringing a survivor, and he's like, okay, I can invite the Holocaust survivor. They'll have something to talk about, whatever. And then it's Colby, and they have this dinner party, and there's this one line where the Holocaust survivor is missing an eye. He has a glass eye. And I don't know why it's funny. It's not funny. That's not funny. But the way they do it is so funny. The Holocaust survivor is talking about how they had nothing and they had to like pee in buckets. And Colby, straight face, goes, we didn't even have snacks. Like it was just so perfect. I watched it so many times and I'm jealous of him because that is such a cool cameo to have made.
Yeah.
We didn't even get snacks. Like that's just cheap.
Were you a Seinfeld person? Did you watch Seinfeld back in the day?
I've seen them now. I mean, I didn't like, I wasn't obsessed with it, but my other half was. I've now seen every single one many, many times. So you can quote anyone that you want, and I've seen it. But I was more of a Friends than Seinfeld. And I
Hmm.
feel like there are people who were like one or the other.
Which is
And
interesting because they were like on right after each other.
yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But I feel like people either think Friends was amazing and Seinfeld was kind of like, all right, fine, or Seinfeld's the best thing to ever happen to television and Friends was really dumb. I
Yeah.
am a Friends. Mhm.
Yeah, it's just so interesting because I think we look at must see TV in retrospect as like a block, and this happened with like TGIF as
Oh.
well. But
Oh
yeah,
my
for
God.
whatever reason, like we all committed to like, oh no, I'm this specific one show, and all the other ones, like maybe I'll watch it. But it's just so interesting again as a Mandela effect of like, oh, you were a big fan of all four of these shows. No, there was really one, and then
Right.
maybe I hung around for the other
Like I
ones.
was there
But
for Will and Grace. I liked Will and Grace. I think Will and Grace is fantastic. I've rewatched Will and Grace, but like it wasn't, you tuned in for Friends and then you just didn't get up to change the channel because back in that day you had to get up.
yeah, and that was their other strategy as well, right? They'd put on like three shows that were tried and true old
And
reliable
then
things.
that one that was like, I don't know what the one was in particular, but like there was always one, but it would be like the 9 to 9:30 spot, and you knew you wanted to be there for 9:30 to 10. So like they probably got the ratings because nobody was getting up.
That's how they got you. They have this like new ingredient in the sandwich, and they slip it in right under one slice of bread, right above the meat. And they think like, okay, maybe they won't
Yeah, but
notice it.
nobody wants little pickles. Like nobody wants that. Like pimento loaf up in there somewhere. Nobody wants that. They'll eat it because the rest of the sandwich is delicious.
Yeah, and then as a result, they're like, all right, pimento loaf has been renewed for three more
Right.
seasons. And then you look back, like, how did pimento loaf run for 5 years? It's like it's just this location in the sandwich.
Yep. It was a Seinfeld Friends sandwich with pimento loaf in the middle.
What other shows do you have on your list?
I don't know what else is on my list. We did most of those.
How about some like
Whatever.
modern shows that you're watching?
Who watches modern shows? I mean, okay, so sitcoms have kind of died, which is crazy to me,
Yeah.
except, no, they haven't. Because now Abbott Elementary is probably the best sitcom that's on television. That show is really, I don't understand. I think it probably came from, I don't know, maybe it came from before Modern Family, but like, why are there cameras following people around all
So
the time?
that
I'm
so
not
that
really sure.
that is specifically and exclusively because of The Office. It's because The Office
Oh,
was
okay.
so popular with that mockumentary format that then that moved on to Parks and Rec, and that moved on to Modern Family, and that has now sort of bore fruit into Abbott Elementary. And it's interesting because from like a realistic perspective, we don't know why there's a camera crew filming this elementary school. Why is there a camera crew filming this
Forget
family?
elementary school. Like Modern Family had it in there. Everyone's house had a camera.
Yeah,
Like
so
it
it's
didn't even make any sense. But
it's
it was
more
still
about
good.
it's just more about the narrative structure of like they like the talking heads, right? They like the sort of sit down monologues to the camera that can be very funny. Of course, through The Office, they were able to use the guides of a documentary, but they kind of just copied it and gave no reasonable explanation for every other time a show has used it afterwards.
I need to watch Parks and Rec. I've not seen more than like an episode of it, but I hear it's fantastically funny.
It's got, the first season, they're still trying to figure things out. They're a bit more. It's interesting because I would say that like the first season of The Office, they were trying to be a clone of the UK version. The first season of Parks and Rec is trying to be an Office clone, but sort of similar trajectories towards the end. They start finding their vibe a bit more, which is like almost this Springfield-esque building out this cast of wacky characters in this town, but also bringing, I would say, a bit more optimism. I think a little bit less of like snark the way The Office was, especially in its heyday. So I very much recommend it. I mean, I do think it maybe incorrectly paints a picture of government by comparison to especially the way that we look at things nowadays, but that could also infuse you with a lot of optimism as well.
Also, I did the ones that I saw of Parks and Rec were early on, but I in my head like to think if I had a group of girlfriends, Aubrey Plaza would be in my group of girlfriends. I think she is just the weirdest, most wonderful. Just to watch her do any interview, she is out of her mind, fantastic, spectacular, like, but just so straight faced about it. So she would
Yeah.
be in my girl posse, along with like I think I would have like Anna Kendrick would be in it just because I think she's weird
Hmm.
and fat. Also, I think most of the people in my group can sing. Like Anna Kendrick, Kristen Bell would be in my group of people. I think she's fantastic.
Well, yeah, apparently you and your friends all like to sing songs to each other out of the blue. So
but also,
like
I will watch anything that these women are in because I just think they're all so super talented.
I was going to ask, actually, do you have a celebrity that, like, no matter what they're in, that's going to usually put your butt in that chair?
I think Kristen Bell does a lot of good stuff. Like she does kid stuff, which I don't. She did this. So over the course of the past few years, like COVID and then on, I probably have seen almost every, if not, no, almost every. These like 8-episode streaming mini series things that they have put out between. Oh, Kaylee Cuoco's. I never really watched The Big Bang Theory, but she did The Flight Attendant, and then she did one. Oh, what was it called? That was really good. Something like It Could Happen to You. I don't remember what it was called, but it was. Oh man, I wish I remember what it was called. You're looking it up, aren't you?
I'm looking up right now. Don't worry, I got you covered.
Where in both things, she plays an amazingly good drunk person, but like also really competent, and like in both things, she's sort of being chased by a killer. The other person in that thing with
is it based on a true story?
Based on a true story, yes. And the main lead man in that one is from the Mindy Project. And
Chris Messina, yeah.
Yes, he's fantastic. The Mindy Project was a great show too. Like that, I love her. I'll watch it. She's in my little girl group of people. Like there's all these like quirky, funny, like just a little spazzy like people. I just feel like, yeah, that would be my little group of.
If they for some reason made a scripted version of The Amazing Race 29, would one of those people be who you would cast as yourself?
I'm not conceited enough to think any of these women would play me in anything. Oh man, Mindy Kaling would be good. Oh, Kristen Bell would be good. I don't know. I feel like she's good. She's a good crier. I would need that in a performer. Yeah, that would be good. She did. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say maybe like she and Aubrey can switch off. Like when you're being like
Aubrey
really.
Plaza. Yes, she's so weird. I love her. Kristen Bell did this thing. Remember, there's all these. I like to read these quick thriller books. There's like The Woman in the Window, The Girl on the Train, the whatever. Like they're all thriller mystery novels. And Kristen Bell did this amazing. It was either 8 or 10 episode mini series streaming Netflix thing. I think it was Netflix, where it was like the girl across the street from the woman in the window on the. It was just a parody of all of it. So Matt does not like to binge watch things. He gets bored after 3 episodes of anything.
That's interesting.
We watched the entirety of this, and he like skipped going to the gym to watch it, which is like a big thing. I don't go to the gym, so it was not a big deal for me. But I was like, he's like, let's just watch one more. And I was like, okay, you must really, really like it.
No, it's interesting because I am also not a binger, but almost for the exact opposite reason, that it's less that I lose interest and more so that things get too jumbled in my mind. And it's like, okay, what was this episode versus this episode? And maybe I'm still approaching things from like a content creator perspective that I want to remember what happened in each episode. But that was the one that was sort of like a parody of all of these. Like they're not true crime, but they're like regular person thrown into, a murder mystery type of thing. Like that. I mean, the title is loosely based on like The Girl from the Train, right?
Yeah, but there's one that was The Woman in the Window. And I think it was Amy Adams and, really, really, really good actor, Julianne Moore were in the movie. And then, so this is like the girl across the street from the woman in the window who's something, something, something. Like it was parodying all of those movies together. And it was just, she's just so funny. And I really like stuff like that kind of stuff. Unless you throw on like HGTV, and then you could just put me in front of a House Hunters marathon or a Love It or List It marathon for a full weekend. Like I am cool with that.
That's so interesting. So is it more for you like the actual decor elements, or is it more about the personalities?
Sit for dramatic effect. I watch for the houses. Like unless they do like a tiny house one, and I don't really care about that. I like the decor elements because I sometimes are like, oh, we should do this. I like that or whatever. But also it inherently makes me feel crappy about our situation because I live in New York City, which is an incredibly expensive place. So when there are people spending $200,000 to get a mansion in the middle of, I don't know, Missouri or wherever, I'm like, oh my God, we could live like kings. Like, and but then I'll be told, you know, you don't get to live in New York City. And I'm like, I guess that's
Yeah,
trade off.
it's an interesting sort of look through an alternate universe of yourself, right? Of like, oh, if I were to go live in the middle of the country, now I know how I could decorate this house.
It's
That's
true. I think I'm waiting for the episode where it is a reasonable amount of money in a place that I would reasonably want to live. And I'll go, that's it. This is what I'll leave New York City for.
yeah, but they're not going to do that, right? It feels like, isn't the joke that like now that it's always opposite ends of the spectrum, where it's just like this ridiculous palatial estate for such either an exorbitant amount of money or a small amount of money?
I'll take a small amount of money. That works for me. Like if they find a great house in a city that is a city that I think I could work in and live in, and it's, you know, a fifth of what it costs to live in New York City, then yeah, maybe we move. Maybe that's the time.
What is it like for the people on these shows? Do you find that they're like, because again, you now have experience, right? Sort of becoming a player in the editor's games. Does that sometimes give you a different eye to like looking at, okay, the way they set up that couple so conveniently talking through all their choices feels a little staged to me.
Oh, it's so there's always one person who's like, money is no object, and one person who's like, we're not spending more than $37. And so I think that's what when we watch it, I think Matt prefers the dynamic part of it. He's like, oh, this person's horrible, or oh, this person's great. I hope they win. Like this is like a winning. But the ultimate HGTV show would be Love It or List It. If you've never seen it, watch it immediately. It is Hillary Farr, who had a cameo in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I subsequently found out after watching many, many seasons of her on Love It or List It. And she's a designer and she will fix your house. And then there's David, who will find you 3 new houses. So then after she's fixed your house and what you want, she's done as much as she can with the budget you give her. The question is, are you going to love it or are you going to bounce and go to the new house? Because David has always found you something that's better. But the people on Love It or List It are idiots. And for the most part, even though Hillary could only do like a third of what she was wanted to do because your budget was dumb and you can't do an entire house for $15,000, she did what she could, and it's way smaller. And David found you the perfect house 6 minutes away. It's like, but we have memories here and blah blah whatever. And we just like to joke around about the people who just list it. You'll make new memories.
How do you think? How do you think the lead couple from Love It or List It would do on The Amazing Race?
How do I think what?
How do you think the Love It or List It people would do on Amazing Race?
Oh my God, David and Hillary would be amazing on The Amazing Race. Oh my God, they're so snarky and fantastic with one another. She's British. He's, I don't know, Canadian. He's Canadian. And they have such a fun dynamic. Although for the most part, like the episode starts with them having a conversation and ends with them together, but they don't see each other during the rest of the episode because he's out showing houses and she's, you know, fixing the mess that the people gave her. So those are my HGTV suggestions.
do you think they would do well as a team? Like, do you think they would bicker? I mean, they'd be great at
they definitely bicker. They would definitely bicker, but I think they do great. I think she wears like, she's proper. She's British. But also you could tell she's scrappy. So I think that they would do just fine, but she's probably in her 60s now and he's, I don't know, 50. So like, they're not a young couple, but they are tried and true, and they are just good TV. Although they haven't made a new one in quite some time. So Hillary, if you want to, you know, get up off your butt and make some new content, there are some
what are they doing?
City. I don't know, but they need to make more.
Should they do these types of HGTV shows? I don't know if they do for like urban environments, because again, it always feels
they did a New York City one for House Hunters the other day, and we're like, that's not New York City. Like, you're lying. Show us the exact location of where you are. But yeah, they do real city ones sometimes. They do apartments as opposed to,
because that feels, I don't know, maybe against the environment we come from. That feels like you're kind of segmenting out, unless. Again, like you said, it's people more so fantasizing. Oh, look at all that space.
Well, yeah, there's like murder porn and there's like home and garden porn. I feel like this is what that is.
That's
and I like to watch both of those things.
That's a nice change of name if HGTV ever decides to go a little bit racier in their branding.
Home and garden porn. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's true though. People are drawn to this stuff. Like we watch more Dateline in this house than I probably ever would want to. My other half is kind of obsessed with Keith Morrison. If Keith Morrison is on anything, we watch it.
Interesting. Is now again, I would wonder if that was like almost again too close to some of the work that you do. But it sounds like as long as you're not, we're not seeing the people who committed the crimes in court, then like it's absolutely fine.
That's the part that I don't like. So whenever they show the court part of it, it's amazing to me how bad attorneys are at trying cases. Like you watch especially if like you're in front of a jury, like be animated, do something. Like some of these people, and that's my critique every time we watch one, where I'm like, I can't watch the court part of it because they're so bad. Like just reading from this and having absolutely no, I don't know.
Yeah, you have to memorize your house monologue. You can't be on book.
Come on, that's right, exactly, off book. Practice in front of a mirror. Do something right, people.
Well, Brooke, we have gone all around this proverbial house that we have built that hopefully people have listed at quite a high price. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other random things you felt we haven't addressed from the big list you've compiled before this?
I mean, I would like to know, I've told you now my big deal things that I watch and love. Is there anything, knowing what I like or what not? Oh my God, so random. My brother is calling. He must know that I'm talking about him.
He knows. He's like, did you tell him about Kiefer?
He doesn't call that often, like unless something is wrong. He's fine. He's fine. Is there anything we should be watching? Like what have I not seen? What do you love? What, even if it's not the same genre of what we're talking about, like what is it? I mean, we're Jeopardy people every night and we like competition shows. We like trivia things. Obviously, I'm a big trivia nerd, but also anything like dramatic and steamy and whatever. What do you got?
I mean, I would say, I know you said that Succession feels like a commitment, but it's 4 seasons of 10 episodes, which is like pretty paltry.
40 hours of television.
But it's a damn good 40. And what it is like, you talk about coming from theater, like it is the most modernized version of Shakespeare I have ever encountered. Like it is the dramatics are so heightened. It is such incredible writing that I think you go in and like you hear some of the intense stuff that happens and you're like, oh yeah, this show's gonna be too dark and dour. It is so funny. It is so incredible.
You know what?
Funny.
You're like the 14th person who's told me to watch it. I feel like I should. I think I thought it was all like finance and money, and I was
that's what I initially
bored.
I remember when I watched a teaser for it. It was when I was watching Westworld and they showed a trailer for it back when it first aired. I was like, oh, like this looks so boring. I don't care about business, to your point, but it's not about that whatsoever. Because again, it's almost like, you know, in the Shakespearean days when it was all about rulers and who would be the next to inherit and who gets the land divvied up. It's that, but in modern day circumstances, which is over a media empire. And so you're dealing with those elements and how that, you know, ends up glomming onto and jutting up against personalities, egos, etc. Like I only started watching it last year. I did similar to what you did with Game of Thrones, where I binged the first 3 seasons to watch it live.
Is it over?
It's over now, yeah.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. Has anyone talked about it on your podcast?
No.
Okay, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to learn it, and then we'll talk about it.
There we go. This is how great Brooke is that she makes a standing appointment to come back onto the podcast. We love.
Cannot get rid of me.
We love it. We don't want you to leave at all.
Ask me on once, and I'm here. I don't go away. I'll just be in the corner next time, being like, "What about Melrose Place and that time Kimberly ripped her hair off?" Like, talk about that.
Well, I'm so happy that we had the ask here for the first and definitely not the last time on this podcast. From runs and stockings to wig reveals, we went all over the place with this podcast, and I would love nothing more. What do you want to plug out there? Social media. I know you do podcasting as well for the listeners out there.
I do one podcast.
That's more than 0.
Where I am, you know, the mini host to the genius that is Bryce Isaiah on his Purple Pants podcast platform. That is a lot of, say that 5 times fast. We have started and we are in the middle of recapping season 5 of The Amazing Race. And I saw him on here. So Bryce, I saw you say that I bullied you into this. He came to me and said, what can we watch? And I suggested a few seasons. He picked 5 because that was the right one to pick.
Yeah.
And I will say we have a few more episodes left, and we have some very exciting guest hosts coming on for the last few episodes of our recap. So that should be really fun. And then I'm on the Facebook. And then Instagram is at The Real Brooke Camhi. And there's a lot of podcast stuff on there and just some trivia stuff with my other reality TV people. We're basically a reality TV trivia team, and so it's really, really fun.
Have you applied for Pop Culture Jeopardy as a team?
If you look at so the name of our team is Bunny Massacre, which I came up with many years ago because it's dark and twisted, and people cannot decide if it's a pile of dead bunnies or if it's the bunnies that are killing people.
Right. Are they the massacreists or the ones being massacred?
Or the massacreists, exactly. Although we went to trivia finals once and I'd made us all t-shirts because I'm a nerd, and it's just a pile of cartoon dead bunnies.
Oh my, okay, well, you answered that question then.
When we come back to talk about Succession, I will wear the Bunny Massacre t-shirt.
Yeah.
So on our Bunny Massacre text chain, I took a picture of Pop Culture Jeopardy. I was like, who is in with me? Because we have Brian Corridan from Survivor, who is just a genius, is probably like understating it. He knows everything about everything. And then Eliza's on our team. Victoria comes to our team from Survivor. And then, my brother and sister-in-law and some non-reality people to round it out and make it whole. But I would like to go beyond Pop Culture Jeopardy. I think that'd be really, really fun. Or I'd like to be on $100,000 Pyramid, because I really think that's the best return on investment that you can get on television. And I'm really good at it. Like sometimes I will just send friends a text message that's just like a list of 3 things, and they know me well enough to like write back the answer. So it's just for fun.
Are you good at Connections? I feel like Connections is
I play it every day.
Yeah, it's like the daily version of $100,000 Pyramid.
Absolutely. I wish there were more. I don't know if there's a Connections archive. Everything else has an archive.
I will send you something afterwards. I use a Connections archive.
Is it on the Times app? Is there
No, I found there's a separate website that compiles an archive of it. So
what I'm doing for the next 3 hours.
All right, well,
amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, we're going to leave Brooke then to her Connections archive and her eventual start to Succession. But of course, you can check out everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom type. Survivor, Big Brother, started covering The Anonymous, which is a very fun new show on USA Network, new reality competition show. I would actually recommend that as well if you're in the mood.
There's a Big Brother player on that.
There is a Big Brother player on that, a Survivor player as well. So,
who's the Survivor player?
It is Nina Twine, Australian Survivor, 2-time player, and Sandra's daughter.
I was going to say, and daughter of, let me guess, Sandra Diaz Twine. Yes, got it.
There you go. So you can check all that out. But if you're in the mood for just scripted stuff, of course, Sasha will be back along with myself and another reality TV star. So we will talk about another piece of scripted television from their past, present, and future. And sooner rather than later, we'll have Brooke back on to finish off that list, hear about Succession, everything under the sun. This was
just give me 40 hours. I got it.
All right. This was I will you're on the clock right now. 20 or 24 starts now. This was such a great time. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. I hope we didn't jump around too much. And if anybody wants my list, feel free to send it to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the party podcast. We are here to jump around, jump up, and get down. So we are going to jump off of your earbuds right now. But until next week, everybody, take care. It's been real.